You know, there's something that I'm very curious about. What are all of the different ways that gender affects us in real life? Now, this can be a touchy subject for some and a curious topic for others. There are new questions about gender identity, gender roles, how this ties into tradition, and even religion. There are lots of ideas, including misogyny, misandry, and all the different isms and schisms. We have heard all types of new conversations on social media about family structures and the infamous debate about the quote-unquote nuclear family. But what does it all boil down to? In this episode of Curiosity Matters, we're going to have a discussion about gender and how it affects all of the different aspects of our lives and a couple of things that we've observed. So stay tuned for the discussion.
Welcome back to the Curiosity Matters podcast. I'm your host, Floyd Wesley, and I'm here with the lovely Courtney, my current fiance, soon-to-be wife.
Ooh, I like the sound of that. Okay.
And co-host. And today we are getting into our gender discussion.
Yeah. So where would you like to lead us in that?
Well, first of all, disclaimer. And I want it to be very clear. I am not the world's foremost authority on the topic. I'm not an expert. We are just speaking from a perspective of our experience and a matter of perspective. So it's all about keeping an open mind as well.
Yes, and I highly suggest that you do your own research. If you feel like what we're saying is like completely like what are they talking about, just go ahead and look some stuff up, ask some questions, remain curious.
Yeah, be curious, because we ain't coming for nobody in any type of way. But I guess maybe we should talk about how we kind of came to a consensus about this topic. And it loosely has something to do with perception, perception, and how that affects us, I think, in our day-to-day lives.
When you say perception, I would assume you mean that the way we perceive each other and the genders that we identify with.
Right. And I mean, particularly when it comes to, I see a lot of it on social media. There's a lot of expectations that I think women have of men and men have of women. Mm-hmm. And what's the basis of some of these things? I think sometimes is the question.
Yeah, and the way that it's portrayed on social media, it comes across so critical and judgmental. It's like, do you really like this other sex? Because it sounds like you like criticizing them. And so, like, we just started to have a discussion about where some of that may come from and some of the traditional ideas that may be the foundation of some of this toxic behavior we've all seen on social media. For instance, we've all seen all the headlines about Andrew Tate, but like, what are the underlying ideas that led to him even developing in a culture like this?
Right. So, man, if you would have asked me, it all goes back to no scrubs.
Oh my goodness.
That's what I would say. If you was to ask me, that's where it started.
Oh my
it's no
goodness.
Scrubs. Once no scrubs started, it started the whole thing. You know what I'm saying? Because now all of a sudden, that's where the idea of the high value man, I feel like, is the genesis of the term high value man. Is that song?
what?
It all
How?
started with that song.
They was just talking about they didn't want no scrubs. You
I
can't
get
be
it.
sitting on the side of your best friend's ride trying to holler at me.
Right. And it's not necessarily to say that this idea was not already prevalent in
Right.
American culture, but it was the cultural impact to me. Now, that's just from my perspective. Like I said,
I mean, for our generation, I could see how that song did have kind of a polarizing effect when it came to like people of the masculine or feminine expression, because the response was the chicken head song, and then it was like after that the energy kind of did shift a little bit towards like, well, it's women over here, no, we for men over here, and it just was like different versions of the same idea.
At that time, there was a lot of things that kind of correlated at that time, and it led in a lot of ways to a rise of a anti-misogynist movement that kind of went hand in hand along with the feminist movement.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. So,
Or what I should say maybe is that it more or less grew, maybe autonomously.
What is an anti-misogynist movement?
Well, that's essentially like that's where you get the man-hating type of narratives, that kind of go along and
the radical feminists.
Yeah. And so what I'm saying is that when you talk about an Andrew Tate, these type of characters are a response to that. These type of characters are a response to this idea that women that are typical, quote unquote, or quote unquote, consider as average, or however you would call it, seeking out men, obviously, that are, and again, it's extremism on both sides. You know what I mean?
I can see where you're coming from.
So yeah, they're both responding to really caricatures of, kind of a smaller subset of a larger movement. I guess you could say, because at the end of the day, everybody wants rights, right? You know what I mean? But until they actually go out there,
rights. Men, like, as a whole, like on this topic, men have never been without rights.
Well, certain men. I mean, when you're just talking about this country in particular, So
no, you talking about no scrubs there. We ain't going all the way back.
In terms of just that, you're okay. In terms of but even then, when you're talking about, so man, that's just the whole thing goes deep, because there's a lot of different perspectives about that.
I mean, honestly, I feel like it all boils down to a lack of emotional intelligence, because the way that gender has been socially constructed has led people to like either project their emotions or push them down, and it's like neither one of those are healthy, and those things have led to these Andrew Tates and these radical feminists talking about we don't need men, we just could have them all in jail and have them coming in cups and weird stuff like that. Like, we're all people at the end of the day, like you said, and we want to live good lives. But it's like, for whatever reason, there's always this idea of opposition that's been culturally constructed.
And that's what I would say leads me to feel that a part of the situation, a part of the discussion needs to be the topic needs to be discussed in terms of how the drastic changes that are currently happening. You know what I mean? And just society. I mean, in just the way that people think, you know. And I mean, it's
Do
been
people
it's been
think?
occurring. It's been occurring for over some time,
Yeah.
but it seems to be like people are becoming more radicalized and people are becoming more segregated along those idealistic lines. And I mean, a part of it to me is just, man, some of these old traditional values, I mean, you know, they've been considered old and traditional for a long time. You know, maybe people are just looking for new avenues, you know, new different types of ways to express themselves.
So at the same time, those people are looking for new things to express themselves, probably because they've never felt comfortable in those traditional values. But the people who have felt comfortable in those values want to remain comfortable, and they see people's attempts at new things as an attack on their values, which it really isn't. Like, and that's what's crazy to me. It's like, if I don't like wearing blue clothes, okay, I'm not going to wear blue clothes. But I can't walk up to somebody wearing blue on the street and be like, take that off right now because I don't like blue clothes. And that's what people be trying to do, especially in terms of gender expression. Like, that is wild to me. Like, girl, I may not understand it. I may not even want it for me. But that's your life. You do what you want to do, okay? You happy, you ain't hurting nobody, we good.
Yeah, there's a part of it to me that, from my perspective, that I feel like we as people may want to try to just be able to examine these things. You know, when you have a Andrew Tate gaining popularity, I mean, it's for a reason. You know, he's speaking to a specific audience. And I mean, a lot of the things, yeah, I mean, he's going to say things that's going to ruffle certain people's feathers, you know, and I would just, maybe, like I said, as
You know,
collectively, we should learn to just kind of soak it in, because some people are going to try to follow his principles and they're going to think I'm this alpha male, you know what I'm saying, role, and they're going to try to fill that role, and it's not going to work for them, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, you know, that gives them an opportunity to learn something about themselves. Like, this doesn't work for you.
I mean, that's true. We all on our own journeys. And I guess some people needed to journey through some muck and ridiculousness on the internet to actually reach their true self-identity later in life. But it's just, like, something occurred to me while you were speaking, that one of the things that I feel like has led to this dichotomy of extremism is the need for people to feel like seen and heard on a mass scale on the internet. So they're going to say the most shocking thing that they feel like is going to make them go viral, get them those views, whether they agree with it or not. And then, like, after so long, who can tell whether those are their true beliefs or just something that they're performing?
True. And I mean, at the end of the day, only time really will tell. Like, you know, and these days, man, shoot, people will come for you off the internet. So, I mean, like, you have to be careful about what you say on the internet, you know what I'm saying? Because people will approach you and try to, put it, you know what I'm saying, to the test on you. But what I would like to see from myself, you know what I mean, personally, you know, more, I feel like, and you know, maybe what I feel like maybe could possibly be the solution, and this is something that I've been thinking for a little while, is as people, we should maybe begin to try to separate the ideas of sex and gender, because I feel like that's a part of the problem, is that sex and gender are closely intertwined.
I understand where you're coming from, but I feel like there's another layer to that. I feel like there's a lack of true understanding of masculine and feminine energy. and people think that men only have masculine energy and women only have feminine energy, instead of recognizing every person has both. And then in that conversation, they're leaving out people who identify as non-binary. So then what you're saying, they just have like neutral, and what is that? What energy do they have? Like, it is energy that we all have the ability to tap into. And right. I feel like if we have a deeper understanding of that, then our understanding of sex and gender would also evolve.
Yeah. I mean, but if you think about it, you've got people that are staunchly opposed. You know, there's to the idea that sex is... You have people out there that basically believe staunchly that sex is only for reproductive purpose. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, like, and you know what I'm saying? They go through extreme lengths to try to make it that way for everybody.
Yeah. But that goes back to what I was saying before. Like, if people would just, I mean, truly mind their business and allow other people to live their lives, this world would be such a more peaceful place. Because you can have, like, the Amish people, they probably subscribe to that idea. But they ain't out here trying to attack every city. Like, nah, destroy your technology, stop the going to clubs. They actually allow their children to come into the secular world, as they would call it, and decide whether to go back, because it is about choosing the lifestyle. And that is something that I truly respect, because it's like, that's for you. It may not be for us. Let me choose what's best for me, and you choose what's best for you.
Yeah, and in this day and age, where now you've got the metaverse coming out, I mean, things like this are not going anywhere. It opens up the possibilities, and it opens up the ability for people to connect. I mean, people can connect with like-minded people over the internet already, from halfway around the world. True. And, you know, promote their ideas and share their ideas with those people. So, I don't know. I just feel like it's getting harder and harder. Like, in the past, I mean, look, I'm not hating on nobody, but, like, it's kind of common knowledge, I guess you could say, that church and the government suppress knowledge, you know, but it's not as easy for them to suppress knowledge as it was, you know, even 50 years ago.
Yeah, no. Knowledge moves faster than ever before. That's why we become aware of things that as they currently happen on the other side of the world. But it all feels like it could go either way because of how fast information moves. And like you said, people can share their ideas all around the world. So it's like, yes, we could have a revolutionary change on the brink, or we could have a regression on the brink. It's like either or. I mean, they just overturned Roe v. Wade, and there are young women dying from sepsis because they had a miscarriage, and they're not their doctor team is not allowed to give them the necessary medication to actually induce their labor so they can get the dead fetus out of their body. Like, that is craziness. We're already seeing regression in some areas because of these ideals. It's just a choice that it seems like that is being presented to our society as a whole. Are we going to say no and actually have a revolutionary movement? Hopefully peaceful, but we'll see. Or are we going to just let this happen and let some places regress? That's what it seems like is happening with the polarization that you're talking about.
Well, in some ways, so there's obviously multitude of dynamics that fall into play.
I mean, we talking about people's freedom. It's like marriage equality. Like, you don't like gay marriage? don't be gay and don't get married. Like, how you gonna decide for somebody else? Like, that is crazy to me.
Yeah, and that is the big thing these days because, I mean, yeah, the authoritarian state is becoming more and more, it seems like a reality. It seems like everywhere. I mean, shoot, I don't know. Where is it not an authoritarian state, you know? But
Any places that are not led like this, they wouldn't like promote or show us here. It's the same reason why we weren't taught about the Haitian Revolution in school. They
right,
ain't trying to show us like, hey, you could actually make some change if you make enough waves.
right. So essentially, if you cannot suppress the knowledge, then the next best thing is to suppress the behavior. You know, if you don't want people to act a certain way, then that's kind of what, a part of it. But on the flip side, I mean, there is some interesting things, that's going on right now politically, without going too deep into it. But who knows? I know that abortion is still legal in certain states, and access to reproductive care of the full spectrum, in certain states. And I would encourage anybody right now, if any ladies out there, if you have pregnancy issues,
I would just say be safe about whatever you're gonna do.
be safe out
That's
there.
all we gonna say about that.
Right.
Because you ain't gonna get us caught up saying, well, they told me.
Yeah. Be safe, everybody. That is the truth. And be curious as well. And we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to go a little bit deeper into the topic of gender and talk about some practical things that, we can do to navigate through some of the toxicity going on out there. Be right back. So we're continuing our discussion on gender. I think there's been some interesting points that's been made. I mean, we talked a lot about some of the concepts surrounding some of the gender issues. I think we touched a little bit on some of the things that kind of lead up to some of the conflicting issues. I just want to go into and delve into some maybe tools possibly for people out there, anybody who's listening on your journey. These are some things that may help you. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, like we said, I mean, for some people, there's questions right now and a lot of contentious debate about gender issues. And so I just want to encourage anybody to, hey, enjoy your own journey. Anybody that wants to do any further reading about the topic, I recommend a book called Questioning Gender, a Sociological Exploration by Robin Ryle, 2nd edition. So you can check that out. It really delves into the topic to a very deep level.
Yeah. That book, it was, I remember the first time we started reading it in class, it was definitely an eye-opening experience because up until that point, most of my exposure to gender had been in like social media or popular media or even like friends that were exploring their own gender expression in college. But actually understanding that, like you said, sex and gender are separate. And not only that, but having this idea that when babies are born, they must be either male or female immediately can be dangerous because there are people who are born intersex. So then what happens to those people in population? How are they supposed to feel? Because why can't we just have the freedom to be who we want as long as it's best for us and we're not hurting anyone? And so I really do encourage people to not only read that book, but there's another book that I read called The Last Time I Wore a Dress. That is about a journey of a person who discovers their own trans identity. And it also deals with some mental health aspects, so just trigger warning there. But I encourage everyone to read these things, redo your own research, because a lot of us, we're just told what our gender identity is. And if you haven't done any exploration, how do you even know how you're currently expressing yourself is what you actually want instead of what you were told to do? Like, I've actually done the exploration and I'm like, yep, I'm definitely a cisgender woman. Like, this is who I am. But like, after the exploration, I made a different decision, then who is y'all to tell me otherwise?
Right. Yeah, nobody can tell you who you are. And I mean, that's the challenge of today's world. It's not so much, obviously, the thing of today's world is, what are we really navigating in today's world? We're navigating the societal structure, more than nature, at this point. So it's like really knowing who you are. That's the real journey in today's day and age. And I'm going to draw from this article, Exploring the Impact of Masking Emotions on Men's Mental Health. And just to touch on a few things that I think could be that for me, these are things that I have to try to be mindful of on a daily basis. And I have to try to, well, for one, I have to accept the reality that I have some toxic traits that are pretty much a part of my identity at large. You know what I mean? In a sense. And in order for me to remove some of those toxic traits, it takes work. But there's this list of harmful aspects of traditional masculinity ideology as outlined by the APA's guidelines, which the APA would, of course, be the American Psychological Association. Mm-hmm. And, wait a second, I lost the page here.
Let me find it for you. There you go, baby.
Okay. So some of the harmful aspects include limiting males' psychological development, constraining males' behavior, gender role strain and conflict, attachment insecurities, violence toward gender and sexually diverse people, strained intimacy in relationships, risky sexual behaviors, lack of intimacy, repression of emotion. These sound like some pretty standard things that, for me, some of these things sound like pretty standard things that you hear women typically complain about as far as, things that we consider as, quote-unquote, men do these types of things. But what I will say is, one thing that I do see in social media particularly is a large emphasis on when we talk about gender roles, and particularly when you talk about the more extremist type of commentators out there. And some people, again, for some people, these types of things work. This uber dominant type of role. For some people, that's just who they are. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, it works for them.
I guess. Everything ain't for everybody, so I guess something is for somebody.
Yeah, everything isn't for everybody, But, again, I do encourage people to, especially when you're talking about gender roles, to kind of think again more in terms of gender as terms of being a level of energy, and I mean a healthy.
Hold on, I want to make a comment about the list that you just read off there, because I know I'm not a man, but as the eldest of six, watching my youngest three brothers grow up, especially without a father figure, I noticed how my mom kind of would tell them don't cry or act like a man, whereas me and my sisters, we was able to cry. And so I always thought that was odd, and I see how it's impacted my brothers. My little brother is 21, and he's sitting here thinking that he can't ask nobody for help. He got to figure it all out on his own, because my mom told him that that's what men do. Men don't ask for help. Men don't cry. And it's I'm seeing him suffer for it. So it's just, I can definitely see how it can impact men's mental health to be told to mask their emotions their whole life. And I just want to commend you for even acknowledging those behaviors in your own personality, because acknowledgement is the first step.
Yeah, and correct. And for me, it really, it kind of goes both ways. I mean, right? See, because, and I know that we've touched on this, privately, before, where we more or less talked about on the flip side of that coin, where in this traditionally, culturally, young women are more or less taught that, you're going to be kind of coddled along, or how would you call it? I mean, or as you said, it's a lack of accountability, or at least these ideals manifest themselves in sense.
I feel like there's a fine line to be walked there, because at the same time, young women are told that we are inherently flawed, and therefore we need to seek out things to fix ourselves, and we are also caretakers of anyone within our vicinity, whether that is our immediate family while we're younger or our partners when we get older, to the point of neglecting ourselves. But then at the same time, we're fed the idea of this damsel in distress, which I think is what you're getting to, idea where it's someone is going to come and save you. From the moment where we pop out, we watch these Disney movies of princesses being saved. Aside from Princess Tiana, because she was black, they had her saving her and her man, but that's a whole different topic.
Right, there you go.
But it's this idea of okay, so you gonna have to take care of everybody on an emotional level, because the men, we're not teaching them how to do that. So you take care of you hold it down emotionally for everybody as the caretaker. But also, when it comes to real life accountability, someone else should be able to do that, because we don't think that you're capable. And it's just so weird, the subtle dichotomy of the message of you take care of everyone, but also don't work too hard, because we don't actually expect anything from you.
Right, and I think that does circle back to, again, where the concept the concept itself is more or less skewed, because when we think of masculine energy, we think of feminine energy, okay, these concepts make sense when you think about protons and electrons, you think about neutrons. All those things all occur in nature naturally. But the way that we in this United States, I would say maybe even more prevalent than anywhere else, or you could say Western culture. And in some ways, in some areas. It's gotten even more skewed, and to the point where now, you've got men on their side that, it's getting ridiculous, really, going both ways. You've got these ideas that really, it really points to kind of a uber sexualization, I would say, on both aspects of, women are supposed to do these things, men are supposed to do these things.
When you say sexualization, what do you mean?
Well, it goes back to this concept that, women are supposed to have children. I mean, because a person is born, obviously, as a woman, I don't necessarily feel like that equates to a person is supposed to have a child. You know what I'm saying?
That sounds to me more like a gender role, because, like we were saying, sex and gender are different. So if you're born a female, that doesn't necessarily mean you will identify as a woman in adulthood. So I feel like,
right,
just to make sure we being clear here, like, yet people who identify as women that can have children, I do think that is a topic that is the personal thing to decide, not something that should be pressured. Like, I went to go visit my aunt the other day, and this is the first time anyone in my family asked me this, and I have been pretty happy about it, but she asked me point blank, so when are you going to pop out some kids? And I'm like, well, first of all, do you not remember? We just lost our child a few months ago. How
right,
insensitive of you. Secondly, that's none of your business. Like, are you going to help me take care of it? You're going to be buying diapers?
Right.
You're going to provide free babysitting anytime I want and need it?
Right. And that's kind of what goes to what lends to the uber sexualization, is because now all of a sudden, I mean, of course, I mean, the aspect of feminine, or the feminine energy, or the way that it's presented, the way that the concept is presented, or promoted in this particular segment of society is, it is hypersexualized to a degree of, the feminine traits are filtered, into a purely physical form, or purely physical aspect of this body shape. You know what I mean? And the characteristics of this body shape all relate back to, these are considered as the ideal conditions of childbearing women. You know what I'm saying?
I guess, I see what you're saying, because like I said, I've done this studying and stuff. I see femininity as like a much larger type of energy. But you're right. When I talk to people about masculine and feminine energy, like, most of the time, they just are going off of what they see someone expressing based off of very, I guess, archaic ideas of what feminine expression and masculine expression is.
Yeah, because feminine, I mean, it's almost to the degree, like, it's almost boiled down to the point of, what is a peak femininity is popping out, the most kids and still staying in that perfect shape. And the peak of masculinity is, popping out or impregnating as many women as possible.
Neither one of those things are healthy, neither for the parents or the children. Like, I like, it's crazy because there is so many layers to what you just said. Popping out as many kids as possible, whether you're a man or a woman, it can't be healthy for the woman. Because, like, let me tell y'all, you ain't been pregnant, pregnancy is hard on your body. Doing that shit one time will change your body forever. Doing it like 6+ times, like, I already seen the effects it had on my mom's body to have 6 kids. I can't imagine having 10+. And as a man, it's like, I can't imagine the stress, the mental stress that would cause to have so many people relying on you to provide and protect them. Like, how? You're one person.
Right. Yeah. So these are some of the ideas, and I mean, look how it's presented in the media. You know, in a lot of ways, it's presented in the media as being the ideal type of lifestyle. You know, so those things, you know, those things help people frame their idea of what is the ideal lifestyle. You know, and nowadays, you know, the extremism is just simply a part of the journey, you know.
I feel like it may be a part of the journey for some, but hopefully it is not for all. But I do feel like the freedom of the exchange of information and access of information is allowing people to see other types of lifestyles than what their families would have just presented to them as the tradition. And hopefully it's going to lead to people just understanding, well, I'm going to do what works for me. You're going to do what works for you. And as long as, like, ain't nobody hurting each other, causing no problems, we should be able to coexist.
Yes, we should.
Ideally. Oh, man. But, you know, like I said, it involves research and also a lot of self-reflection, because if you have no understanding of self, you can't have any understanding of anyone else.
Right. And so, I mean, I would say anybody that's listening to this episode, well, mainly what I would, well, you know, we're all going to take from it. What I'm taking from this episode is just energy, you know, and balance, you know. You know, you can always have too much of a good thing.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing that I'm taking from it is, like I said, your self journey is much more important than what is being prescribed to you by those around you. If what someone is telling you to do goes against what you feel in your spirit, do what feels right to you. I mean, unless you're hurting somebody, then you need to, you know, go to therapy, figure out what that's about. But shoot, you might want to go to therapy either way. They be awesome at helping you figure out your own self journey. But really dive deep into that self-reflection. And if you have any comments about this episode or any past episodes or anything that you would like us to explore that you're curious about, please go ahead and send us an email at curiositymatterspodcast5280@gmail.com.
Yes, do. And what else?
That's all I got.
All right. So thank you for joining us for this episode of Curiosity Matters. We look forward to checking in with you guys on the next episode. Until then, just stay curious, do your thing.
All right.